Evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Can you all see and hear me? Give me a 5 if you're seeing and hearing me. Let's see if I've gone live yet. At the moment, nothing's coming up on my screen. So I do need the people in the chat to say hello. Yes, I know I'm early. We'll have a chinwag before the actual start of the show. So we're seeing quite a bit coming out there. 5 so you can see and hear me. Grumble 234 was the first to come up. Shepherd 63, yes sir, 5. Let me have a look and see who else is coming out there. Now there's a few things, Elor. There's a few things that we want to talk about tonight. There's quite a bit been going on. Listen, it's hard work trying to keep up and trying to adjust your mind to what is actually going on. So I'll go through a few things tonight. One of them goes back to Rupert Lowe. I'm going to concentrate on England, right? Whilst the Epstein files are important, and I'm not suggesting they're not, there's some other things in the background that are very strange with the Epstein files. President Trump is about America and America first, right? He is not interested in the British. He has mentioned England a number of times and Scotland. But remember, I mean, people kept saying to me, what, you like Trump, you this and all that, you trust Trump. Well, the answer is I don't trust anyone. But the people I really do trust are the American people, and they voted en masse for President Trump. They are not stupid people. They're working people. The majority of the workforce come out. He's doing things a lot differently to Nigel Farage or even Rupert Lowe at the moment. He's moving away from Wall Street and pushing the money and the success towards what he describes as Main Street. In other words, normal, everyday working people, right? Because for too long, the system has abused them, and he understands how important they are to America. He's also massively got on with what we are describing over here as re-immigration. He's picking in people up and sending them out. There's been a number of high Supreme Court cases that have gone in his favour. And I just want people to realise that he's not here, although he would assist, he's not there for us. The only people who are going to sort us out are us, right? I'm sure there's going to be some other things going on. But the reason I'm mentioning this is the Epstein files and Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, who massively supported certain people, including Tommy Robinson, including Hearts of Oak, right? So everyone should know that there was a continuous thing with Hearts of Oak. Very British centric, very all about the British, when the British are a minority, right? For everyone listening to this again, I just want to make sure you're all clear of this. In 2011, the census was put out. For the first time ever, it had English-only national identity. Everyone applauded and cheered. Yeah, they're finally recognising us. That's not what it was for. They used that information and flooded the areas with the highest amount of English with migrants. It's currently happening in Cumbria in quite a big way, with there being a massive mosque when Cumbria is something like 98% white English, right? Build and they will come. They're doing the same with Devon. I think Devon has now got 10 mosques or madrasas. right? And again, 98% white. And they're now flooding the area. And Devon is crucially important to England and the English Constitution, especially Brixham in Devon. And there's a whole story around that, which I'm not going to go into tonight. But what is important to know is that British was a minority of 19%. In fact, I believe it was 11 million people said they were British. And those who said they were English was only national identity were 32.4 million. So if you take half of the British as being foreigners, right, which is what they are, you've got 5 million white British and 32.4 million English. Can you start to see that they have an issue? They have conned people for many decades, if not over a century, to start to make you believe and indoctrinate your mind that you are British. Once they've done that, they give you something called a legal fiction, which is a British passport that says you're British. Once you accept that, and you accept that you're British, you no longer have English constitutional rights, you no longer have Scottish constitutional rights, Northern Irish constitutional rights, and what happens to you is exactly the same as what happened to Southern Ireland. Southern Ireland rejected the crown. They become a republic, and no issues with that. But what the Fabian Society did in 1937 was rewrote their constitution and erased all their rights. And that is now why they are completely and utterly under attack, and being part of the European Union are being flooded with foreigners, right? It's nothing to do with the English. It is partly to do with the British, but it is more to do with the European Union, right? The European Union tried and failed to bring in a European Union constitution. 3 countries, it was put to referendum, and 3 countries said no. And then they had to rename it. I believe it was the Maastricht Treaty, and it was the same thing. They just renamed it. I've done videos about this in the past. The point I'm trying to make to you is that the European Union is communist, not Nazi. And some of them communist old Eastern European bloc countries understand exactly what's going on, right? And they're pulling away from the European Union. They don't want to be part of it. Russia, again, is not a communist nation anymore. They walked away from that. But the key point is, if you think of 19% of the population of Great Britain, meaning the island, right, refers to itself, 19% of Great Britain refers to itself as British, right? 57% English only, and then it jumps up to 67% if it's English British, right? So the point I'm trying to make to you is that figure of 19% is crucially important, because even though the Soviet Union, which created Soviet as a nationality, and Joseph Stalin did that, what people must understand is 20%, even now. So 1991, they completely avoided the Soviet Union, went back to their nationhood and nation states. So Russia and Russians were back again. Even today, 20% of the population of the whole USSR still refer to themselves, after 70 years of a Soviet Union, Soviet Republic, still refer to themselves as Soviets, not Russian, not Belarusian, not whatever. They still regard themselves as Soviet. So the brainwashing and indoctrination by the state is what does that, right? So where people attack me for saying I'm English, right? Think about the people who stood up in front of Soviet judges and said, I'm Russian. I am not a Soviet, I am a Russian. In the end, they have got a leader with President Putin that shut down the criminal. He's done more against organised crime than anyone else, right? Shut down the organised crime and started to create and enforce the Russian constitution. If you read it, it's actually quite good. There's bits of it I don't agree with. But the majority of the Russian constitution, bear in mind I'm a constitutionalist, so I read constitutions, a bit like me reading the Liberian constitution, where the Liberian constitution created an ethno state, and it basically says you cannot be a Liberian unless you are a Negro, right? It actually states that in the constitution. So all I'm doing is telling you what's actually occurring there, right? So let's get back. We're coming up to when the show starts. There are things that we need to seriously start pushing out there. I want as many people as possible to hit the like button, right? I noticed when I come on, there was 28 watchers before the show started. And there was only 14 people who had hit the like button. So hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share, right? Because it's really important that you share. And we need to be working as a team to try and get this message out to people, right? I'm just a mouthpiece for you, right? You have all found this channel over time where I've been shut down on YouTube, shut down on Facebook, shut down on Twitter. This is Rumble. Right, and I'm speaking to you, even though we are going out live on YouTube. I do not trust YouTube as far as I can throw it. The people it promotes in general, I do not trust. Right, there's a reason why you're being promoted on YouTube, and most of the people being promoted on YouTube are the people that are not questioning the state. So I just want everyone to understand that you can question the state on the Rumble platform. And as the original meme that identified this show said, the Constitution is there to restrain the government, not restrain the people. It's to give the people the power to come back at the state. All right. That's what I am, is a constitutionalist, and England has a constitution. Does everyone understand that? Rebel, Taffy Bat, treason must never be tolerated ever within our UK countries. That's correct. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to come over to Rumble, the full English show, and subscribe. Put the notification on, because if they take us down on YouTube, at least you can come back to here and know that we're here, because we're always doing something or plotting something. That was lemon and lime and hot water and honey. But I got to the bottom bit where it was almost pure lime. This is an attack on England. It's also an attack on Wales, Scotland and Ireland. Yeah, no, it is. They are fully in attack mode. Right, so again, I just want people to understand what it is that we're doing. So tonight, I'm going to try and show you, there's two things I want to show you. One was, there was a priest that was on Liam Tufts' show on YouTube, and he was very emotional about what had happened and what had happened with the church in this country. I believe when he speaks of country, he speaks of Britain. Britain is not a country. And if you're anything to do with the Church of England, you should not be talking of Britain as a country. You should be talking of England, right? That aside, I've seen a couple of things which I'm going to go through tonight. But the biggest thing that I've seen today, and again, I'm concentrating on England, right? I'm concentrating on Rupert Lowe, sorry, and his team, who have brought all this information out, and they have an inquiry ongoing that we've all helped to pay for. Many more people have come forward. In fact, Rupert Lowe has now said there are hundreds of once you start to advertise it and they realise. That's why the BBC, that's why the Daily Telegraph, the Daily Mail and all these others, that's why Parliament, the other political parties have not spoke about it. You should all know. Remember when you used to get, what was it called? Police 5. Or what was the other one that came along later where Jill Dando got murdered? Once you start to have it, all of a sudden you'll start getting people come forward and witnesses and all that. People's loyalties change, by the way, over time. It's something you have to be very careful of. People's loyalties change. And once that loyalty changes, you can find all of a sudden someone that you trusted 250 million% is all of a sudden a born-again Christian and decides to turn state's evidence or Queen's evidence, right? I've seen that happen with people. So what am I trying to say to you here? As a lead in from that, they're trying to shut down another avenue of evidence gathering, right? This is exactly what happened with Charlie Staple, right? So we put a case forward for Charlie Staple, which was the Criminal Justice Act 1988, section 134. We went through the process of private prosecution where we had to ask permission of the Attorney General, right? The Attorney General declined. We then took it to judicial review. The judicial review declined. We then took it to appeal. The appeal declined, right? You've run out of rope then, right? The next step is universal jurisdiction in the United States of America, or another jurisdiction, could be Russia, right? Because they also signed up to universal jurisdiction, and UNCAT, which is the United Nations Convention Against Torture. Why am I telling you this? Because we made freedom of information requests to highlight and outline this case. Dave was the person who did it, one of our members. And to the Department of Justice and the police. And they both come back and said no one's ever asked to put a case or to privately prosecute anyone in England, police officers, and it's been rejected. The case didn't exist, right? Now, we all know that's a complete and utter lie. We know that they're manipulating the system in the background because they don't want people, and especially the outside world, to know that we've already gone through this process. This is really important. People like Rupert Lowe and his team need to know this, right? We're not a group of nutters. We're not conspiracy theorists. We've done everything the way we should have done it, right? And the government have lied, and the civil servants have lied in a freedom of information request, right? And that's in the Charlie Staples case. And I think Dave has still got that out there, right? Here's the kicker. I'm going to show you now, hopefully, something that's just come up, or say just come up. Let me bring it up and make sure you can all see it on the screen, because this is really important. Casey Lamb is a barrister. Constitutionally, by the way, she shouldn't be in Parliament. There is a reason for that. you're supposed to have an 18-month delay from leaving the legal profession to being a member of Parliament. That's how it worked, because otherwise you just fill up Parliament with people who just want to make law, right? To know the truth about the grooming gangs, we must have access to court records at every level. The culture of secrecy in many of our institutions help cover up these crimes in the first place. Labour must not allow this, must not be allowed to do this. The public deserves to know the truth, right? Now, on your screen, I'm hoping you can see the Ministry of Justice orders deletion of the UK's largest court reporting archive. Court Desk, which supports the media in monitoring records, is an important tool for journalists, and the move raises concerns over open justice. So there's an investigations reporter, George Greenwood. The Ministry of Justice is ordering the deletion of a large archive of court records raising open justice concerns. Court Desk, a data analysis company that supports media and campaigners in monitoring court records, has been ordered by the government to delete its archive, which provides a crucial tool for investigative journalists. Now, many of you will know I've had 2 or 3 people come to me for appeals, including Charlie Staple with when he got found not guilty, unanimously not guilty by a jury in Isleworth. That when the police made admissions of guilt during their evidence, we then asked for the transcript and was going to pay for it, and they come back and said it's inaudible, there is no transcript. So the police had made admissions during the trial, and the whole transcript had been deleted, and it was inaudible. Someone else, not a similar case, but slightly similar, except they didn't go with a jury. They asked for the court record, and it wasn't there. It was inaudible. Now, over hundreds of years, we have records of our court cases that you can still go back through the archives and look at famous cases. Let's think of one that's really famous. There's lots of famous cases, but it's all recorded. So you can go to the archives of the Central Criminal Court, the Old Bailey, even prior to it being the Old Bailey. And all of them cases are up there, including us hanging 4-year-old kids for stealing a bread roll, right? All of that information is in there. Rape cases are in there. Murder cases are in there, going back hundreds of years, hundreds and hundreds of years. In fact, there are archives going back 800, 900 years, 1,000 years, right? Because Crown Courts, the Assize Courts, courts above a magistrate's court, and that includes the Court of Common Pleas, the Equity Courts, all of the courts that were more senior to a magistrate's court were known as a court of record, where it must be recorded. And at any time in the future, you can return back to that. If something happens, you can get a pardon. Even if you've died or been hanged, you could have got a posthumous pardon and an apology from the state for hanging you. Not that it does you a lot of good, but it probably would have assisted the family somewhat. But the point I'm trying to make to you is what they're trying to do now is because the team that Rupert, I believe, that the Rupert has put together, and I wish we could be part of that team for investigative purposes and the law, are uncovering things. More and more people are coming forward because a lot of these cases that went to court were not recorded. and admissions were made during those court records on record under oath that can be used for criminal prosecutions against not only the police constables, the chief constable, but also the judges, also the prosecutors, also in some cases like Lucy Letby, the defence counsel, but also social services, for example. That's probably one of the biggest offenders, but also the National Health Service. Because what you'll see is witness statements from the National Health Service saying, yes, this person has got cuts, bruises, all of the indication of being raped, but there was nothing further done by the National Health Service. All of that is evidence of a state conspiracy to acquiesce, to in some ways consent, but certainly where it was never put into official record or reports of social services, the police, or any other inquiry. If it was omitted, all of those things, including some police officers who acted on the information and then further raped the victims for their own sexual gratification, those people can be prosecuted for torture. It's an indictable offence only, and if found guilty by a jury, it is a mandatory life sentence, whole life sentence. If the Attorney General was not to give permission, you can ask and request for the case to be heard in another jurisdiction that ratified the United Nations Convention Against Torture, which is one of the countries is the United States of America. For example, you could bring the case in Texas and it would go in front of a Texas jury, same evidence, etc. If the people are found guilty, they would be sentenced to life imprisonment. And this can also be, for example, members of the royal family, including the king himself. Because when it comes to torture, Crown immunity does not kick in. So, because it's been deliberately excluded. And the reason for that is because it is the state that's being prosecuted. And the king himself is responsible for the state. He is technically the head of state. So I just want everyone to understand what is going on here. What they're doing now is removing these archives and removing the investigative side of the reporting. Can everyone understand now why this is so important? Just give me a yes in the chat that you're all listening to this and understand the significance of what they're doing, right? They have already done this to us in 2 or 3 different cases where the records have gone, right? So if myself or you or our own people that we've progressed these cases were not a worry to the state, they wouldn't have done that, right? So I just want everyone to understand what is going on. This is possibly what I've just explained to you and showed you is possibly the most serious, heinous thing that I have seen them do. And the reason they're doing it is because of the success of Rupert Lowe and his team. That people are now coming forward. They've had to set up another group. And so they've got this inquiry going on, and where the inquiry's been seen and it's been watched, and I understand. And by the way, my understanding is there's a documentary being made where and a full report is going to be made, and then a list of the people who they intend to privately prosecute, I believe, for torture. It needs to be for torture. Any other the evidence is there, and it is simple to get. It's more simple to get convictions for torture than it is anything else. It's just they're trying to stop you from presenting that to a jury. But again, my view of this is it is highly unconstitutional with what they're doing, saying we want to delete records. It is definitely illegal for a court of record, that means above a magistrate's court, not to have a recording of all of the proceedings, because those recordings are used for appeals, and they're used and possibly can be used for further court procedures, whether it be civil procedures or criminal actions against other people, including the police. So what you're seeing is very, very serious, right? I mean, really serious. And it is unconstitutional. And the law currently says that they have to have these records. So if anyone goes after and gets a reply back to say it's in the recordings, because they should have a stenographer. That's why we ask for stenographers, because the person is actually sitting there, actually taking the notes and doing it properly. Because otherwise, if you don't do it like that, they'll say we didn't get it's just an accident, right? There are thousands and thousands and thousands of cases where they're coming back and saying inaudible, 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 right? Digital nations do not work. It is too simple to strike the record. And that is that's what not just this government, but previous governments happened under the Tories and the Conservatives. It happened with this Labour Party. It's happening with all of them, right? And it is unconstitutional. It is serious, very serious. Not on a minor infringement of our rights. It is maximally. If you think about the history of England, legally going back hundreds of years, with information that you can just go and draw up and bring up the actual case history and what has been said to the witnesses, what the witnesses said, what the judge said, all of that information is there. And they are talking about deleting it. So all I'm doing is making you aware of how serious it is, right? It's not minor. Everyone should be up in the arms about this, right? The next thing, again, I'm going to go on to another subject, but the other subject that we want to cover tonight, well, actually, there's a few subjects that I'm going to be covering, but one of them was this one. Let me see if I can actually put it out there, because it's better if you read this stuff. And this was, let's see if I can push this information out to you. I'll put it out there first. Right, so there's the link to it. This is quite important. And then I'll go through some other information. But this comes from Conservative Woman, I think it is. Bishop Kieran H. Dewar, February the 8th, 2026. A king who doubts his faith cannot offer spiritual leadership. Now, again, I want to make this clear to everyone that it is my legal opinion as a constitutionalist and a paralegal that King Charles has perjured his oath and has abdicated by deed, right? Because he is not the defender of faiths. He is defender of the faith, which is the Protestant religion, right? That's what he is. That is the Glorious Revolution settlement of 1688. It's the coronation oath, and it's also the Bill of Rights. It's also the Acts of Settlement. It's also, if you want to lean that far, the Acts of Union. So this king has betrayed us, he's particularly betrayed the Protestant religion. And England is a Protestant nation. My personal belief is that we need to go back to being a non-secular nation, which means it doesn't mean that you could not be a Muslim or you could not be a Jew. It would mean that you absolutely you cannot override England, right? And by the way, the Bill of Rights already states that you can't have Sharia law, you can't have Jewish law, and you can't have all these other laws. And in fact, you cannot have Christian laws that are imposed by the church, right? So in other words, there can't be a penalty from the church or anyone else. That's part of the English Bill of Rights, which is still in force, but not being enforced. So again, I'm just going to read out part of this. The most serious constitutional shifts rarely announce themselves with fanfare. What a great opening sentence. They emerge instead through tone, emphasis, and the gradual reordering of loyalties noticed first by those who understand what an office is and for, and only later by the wider public. That is where we now find ourselves in relation to King Charles III. Not confronting a single speech or gesture in isolation, but recognising a sustained pattern of theological softening that sits uneasily, indeed incompatibility, with the historic vocation of a Christian monarch and supreme governor of the Church of England. Now, my personal belief is the Church of England has been infiltrated by a number of groups of people, but in particular the Jesuits. Charles is not merely a private citizen with electorate spiritual interests. He is the supreme governor of the Church of England. What happens then when the man who embodies that role increasingly speaks as though Christianity is merely one voice among many, rather than a spiritual grammar of the realm he governs? The recent interview with Lauren the Insider that has prompted renewed discussion, particularly the reflections offered by former Royal Chaplain Dr. Gavin Ashton, did not create this concern. It merely named it. What many have sensed for years has now crystallised into a recognisable unease. Has the king drifted from being a Christian monarch to becoming a religious pluralist, wearing a Christian vestments? To understand where we are, we must first understand how we arrived here. Charles' engagement with Islam did not begin with his accession to the throne. It stretches back decades to his time as Prince of Wales, when he cultivated a reputation as an intellectual heir rather than a conventional royal. There's nothing intellectual about the man whatsoever. That's my ad lib. Unlike his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, whose faith was quiet, stable, and unambiguous, Charles has always been a seeker. Ideas fascinated him, traditions intrigued him, systems of meaning drew him in. In the late 20th century, as Britain wrestled with post-imperial identity and increasing religious diversity, Charles began to speak publicly about Islam in unusually warm and admiring terms. He praised Islamic civilization for preserving classical learning. He spoke glowingly of Islamic architecture, metaphysics, and its vision of harmony between humanity and nature. In 1993, in a speech at Oxford, he lamented Western ignorance of Islam and suggested that Christianity had something to learn from Islamic spirituality. What, like fucking rape? Mohammedans is what you should be describing Muslims as, right? Just make sure you use that word, because that is our word for them people. At the time, these remarks were often defended as cultural diplomacy. Britain's Muslim population was growing, tensions were real, bridges were needed, and to a point this was true. Courtesy between faiths is not betrayal, respect is not apostasy. But over time, the tone shifted. What began as appreciation hardened into preference. What began as dialogue shaded into theological relativism. Christianity was no longer presented as the lens through which Charles viewed the world, but as one tradition among several that had shaped his thinking. Perhaps the most revealing moment in this journey came when Charles mused publicly about altering the monarch's ancient title. For centuries, English sovereigns have retained in perpetuity the designation Defender of the Faith, which was originally conferred only on King Henry VIII by Pope Leo X. It is a declaration of responsibility. Charles suggested instead that he might prefer to be known as the Defender of the Faith, or even Defender of Faiths, plural. The theological implications are seismic. Defender of the Faith implies the truth of Christianity expressed through creeds, sacraments, and scripture. Defender of Faiths assumes that all religions are functionally equivalent expressions of a shared spiritual impulse. One vision presupposes revelation, the other presupposes relativism. A Christian king may protect the right of others to worship freely, but he may not dissolve his own confession into a multi-faith abstraction without emptying his office of meaning. This is such a beautiful paragraph. The crown is not a chaplaincy to the world. It is a covenant with a particular people, the English, formed by a particular history, baptized into a particular faith. This is where defenders of Charles often falter. They point to his sincerity, his learning, his good intentions, and none of these are in doubt. But kingship, especially Christian kingship, has never been about personal spirituality alone. The monarch does not merely have beliefs. Let me just make sure everything's fine with this and I'm not getting... The monarch does not merely have beliefs, but represents belief. He stands as a living symbol to continuity between past, present, and future. His coronation is not a personal milestone. It is a sacramental moment in the life of the nation. Absolutely. At his coronation, Charles swore oaths that bound him to uphold the Protestant faith as established by law, to speak pluralist but reign as a Christian creates confusion among all citizens. Symbols lose coherence. Offices lose authority. Ritual becomes theatre rather than the truth. Furthermore, Charles' engagement with Islam is not just sociological or diplomatic, it is also spiritual. He has spoken admiringly of Islamic metaphysics, of its emphasis on divine unity, of its integrated vision of faith and daily life, and how Christianity, fragmented by modernity, might recover something by listening to Islam. Yet Islam proposes a rival theology. It explicitly denies the central truths of Christianity, the incarnation, the crucifixion, the Trinity. To learn from Islam in a way that relativizes these truths is not enrichment, but erosion. A Christian king may respect Muslims without borrowing their theology. He may defend their civil rights without adopting their metaphysics. Once those boundaries blur, Christianity ceases to be the foundation of the realm and becomes only one participant in a spiritual marketplace. Perhaps most damning of all is the response, or lack thereof, from the Church of England itself. Hear, hear. One might expect bishops, theologians, and ecclesiastical leaders to articulate clearly the theological boundaries of Christian kingship. One might expect respectful but firm reminders of what the crown represents and why it matters. Instead, there has been a near total silence, punctuated only by vague affirmation of dialogue and inclusion. This silence is not neutrality, it is abdication. Can you all see that line? What have I been saying to you? This silence is not neutrality, it is abdication. A church uncertain about truth cannot correct a monarch drifting from it. A church embarrassed by doctrine will always applaud pluralism, even when pluralism empties its own claims of substance. The result is a feedback loop of decline. A king who relatives Christianity and a church too timid to say otherwise. History teaches us that nations rarely collapse from external pressure alone. They hollow out from within. When symbols lose meaning, when offices lose definition, when leaders forget what they are for. A bit like the Constitution. Britain today is post-confessional. We no longer know what we believe, only what we must not say. In such a moment, the monarchy could have served as a stabilising force, a visible reminder that this nation was shaped by Christian truth, even as it accommodates diversity. Instead, the crown appears increasingly aligned with the very forces that dissolve that memory, because a king cannot speak with clarity about his own faith, cannot anchor a nation drifting into moral and spiritual incoherence. The question before us is not whether King Charles is kind, intelligent, or sincere, but whether he understands or is willing to inhabit the full weight of Christian kingship. If the monarch becomes merely a facilitator of spiritual pluralism, then the Church of England is another NGO, but with vestments. If Christianity is no longer privileged in the life of the realm, then its displacement will not come through persecution, but through polite irrelevance. That's exactly what's happening. And history will not record this as an act of tolerance, but a failure of nerve. There was a time when kings knelt before God so that the nation might stand. Today, we seem to have a king who stands above traditions so that none may claim authority. That may win applause in academic circles and interfaith conferences. It will not sustain a civilization. King Charles provides no spiritual service to the people of this country when he only mirrors their confusion. And then it says that a longer version of this article appeared in the crux of it, Substack, on January the 20th, 2026, and is published. And that is the guy that we're talking about. This guy here on the, hopefully you can see him. That's the guy we're talking about. He just wrote that. Let me just go back to the audience. Now I've just read that out for you. Hopefully you could see and hear me. Graham is just another dumb fucker. No, I agree. Tracy for the general inquiries, North CMP. So don't forget, we have a constitutional seminar coming up on the 28th of this month in Cumbria. So again, that information is out there. It's on Twitter. I need as many people to come along to that as possible. It's going to be a long old drive for me. But again, I will be, if people ask me the question, why is it that you say the king has abdicated? It's not just me saying it. I've been saying this for a long time because I understand the Constitution. I understand what perjuring your oath means. And King Charles III has perjured his oath, right? And when you perjure an oath, and especially a coronation oath, it is a solemn oath to God. Once that's happened, you're gone. There is no pardon. You're gone, right? And people need to understand that. The Grim Reaper walked past outside. Let me just make sure everyone is still up there and listening. What I don't want is for this to switch off. I'm glad everyone could see and hear that. So tonight's show is not, there's a number of subjects that we are covering, but tonight is crucially important for everyone. So when some people have said to me, you know, why aren't you covering the Epstein files? Listen, I'm about England, right? Whilst that is important, what's really important is England, right? And we need to get these people away from this indoctrination by the state in believing in a legal fiction of British, right? It was created statutorily by a British Parliament, and it has removed your rights, and it is, as he said, hollowing us out from the inside, right? We've got to stop that. You need to go back to being English and Welsh and Scottish and Irish, and the Northern Irish in particular. Like I say, and I've said on numerous occasions, the Northern Irish are more English than the English because they get it in a big way. Kew Gardens, not my Tampax. Yeah. Again, the man is a complete and utter nightmare. He shouldn't be there. He's currently protecting his brother, whilst he says, you know, we've done this, we've done that. It's not a good situation. Let me. I can't hear anything out of that here, so I will try. I'll sort that one out in a minute. Right. Any questions from the audience before I go on to the next brief subject? The king has deserted his nation. This is treason of the highest. Yeah, no, it is treason. He's perjured his oath. He has abdicated by deed, right? And omission, again, if you look at what he's actually doing, the guy who wrote that was highly emotional. I'm not even sure if I can bring it up on the screen at the minute. But he was highly emotional when he was speaking to Leon Tufts. And trust me when I say this, I absolutely get his emotion. I get what he was talking about. I understand how he can be so emotionally charged by it, right? And people need to understand it's not a game. What we're everything is going on at the moment. Someone's just put out Charles is a dog king. It's exactly what he is. Breaking. There is a mobile document shredder parked outside Downing Street, UK. There's a mobile document shredder parked outside Downing Street. There you go. This is one of the reasons I'm standing in Runcorn. That was an old one. Right, let's go and see if I can see some other stuff coming up here. But people need to understand all of this stuff. The Home Secretary told me last week that all relevant bodies have been directed to, not to destroy critical records relating to the grooming gangs. We now know this didn't include the Ministry of Justice, West Yorkshire Police or safeguarding, just to make sure. What we do know is that the number of people in the background are picking up on this. This is massive, about them destroying the records, right? Because they know that they're going to prison, right? So just to make sure you're all, this is not minor, it's massively serious, right? The Home Secretary told me last week that all relevant bodies had been directed not to destroy critical records relating to the grooming gangs. We now know this didn't include the Ministry of Justice, West Yorkshire Police or safeguarding authorities in Bradford, right? And I'm going to play this to you.
Baroness Casey's audit was very, very detailed and thorough. But on page 151, it specifically said within that audit that whilst the inquiry is being set up, the national inquiry is being set up, police forces and other relevant agencies should be, in the meantime, required not to destroy any relevant records relating to grooming gangs. Now, I've done a Freedom of Information request to West Yorkshire Police and to the Bradford Safeguarding Partnership. Both of those organisations have not received any formal directive from the Home Office asking for no grooming gang records to be destroyed, and specifically saying that those records should be retained for a national inquiry. Why has the Home Office not issued a direction to all safeguarding bodies?
I believe that direction has been issued. So
well, it's not been issued to West Yorkshire Police and Bradford Safeguarding.
Let me take that back, because it did come up before, and it was our understanding, and it remains my understanding today that everybody that needed to have been written to has been written to be told to protect all records for the purposes of the inquiry. So I will check that and get back to you and write.
Well, did you all see that and hear it? Right. You have now got someone in charge who's deleting all the information, and that they're actually doing it. So there again, in the next few months, we will be doing rigorous security tests on XChat, and we'll open source the code, right? The Brenham Centre have run tables at war games. Now, there's another element to this that I wanted to show you briefly. What's that? An old Volvo there. There's our little case coming up there. There's a particular thing that I wanted to show you that relates to, and again, which one's this? Let's see what he says.
Good evening, everybody. I've been at the rape gang inquiry now for the whole of last week and today, and I've just come out of the house where I spoke twice, once about the rape gang issue and once about the misfeasance in public office and the appointment of Peter Mandelson. I felt compelled just to do a little video, because when you hear the evidence from these poor white working class girls who've been abused on a scale which is just quite unbelievable, if you have been lucky enough to be brought up in a safe, secure environment, the state has completely failed them. And it, to me, shows how puerile and petty and irrelevant a lot of the debate about these ministerial issues is when we talk about them in the House of Commons. The stories that we've heard are just frankly unbelievable. The scale of the evil is just simply off the scale. And the authorities across the board have absolutely failed to look after these girls and protect them and do their duty. So I felt, from the point of view of what we are doing, we complete the inquiry at the end of this week. We will then be producing a report, which will be very hard-hitting. But I thought I'd share that thought with you. There are some very, very serious things going on out there. They're still going on, and they're not being talked about. Indeed, today, Shabana Mahmood attempted to suggest that it's all stopped. It hasn't stopped. It's ongoing. and it's vile.
So there you go. What I also want to do is show the links: Israel, Dubai, Palantir, and the Epstein files. There's a lot of stuff coming out here, and there was a particular one that I wanted to show you. Hopefully, we will find it in a minute. But Farage is linked to Epstein, and again, someone else is linked to Epstein, which is Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon is linked to Hearts of Oak, and to Tommy Robinson. Again, I don't want to get too far into the Epstein stuff because I'm about England, right? Whilst it's serious, I think it's almost a distraction from everyone focusing on what these people are doing or haven't been doing in relation to the rape and torture gangs that are still operating in England, and the majority of the English white working class girls are still being raped and potentially trafficked and have been trafficked to Pakistan. There can be, and there probably is, young white working class girls being held and being continuously raped in Pakistan, where they don't speak the language, and they're held in well, whatever you want to describe it as, but a rape house in Pakistan. And again, I just want everyone to understand that is currently happening. So let me have a look. You know, it's all linked. It's all linked. But there is so much going on. I mean, I've been looking over the weekend and today at my major files and looking at information coming through. And to be fair, I've never seen anything. It's continuous what's coming out. Almost so much that you can't keep up. But I want to reiterate and go back over what I said about President Trump. I don't trust anyone. I certainly don't trust Nigel Farage without any doubts whatsoever. I lean heavily towards Rupert Lowe, and I lean heavily because he's proving what he's doing, even though there's some things he said I don't particularly like. But again, when it comes to President Trump, it is the American people that come out and voted for him en masse, right? Because they knew there was frauds going on. Over time, they have demoralised people in America to stop voting, just like they've done here, right? The only way you're going to take the country back is if you get out there and vote. So register to vote and vote. And especially those, even though, I think Advance UK is completely useless. The policies, what they've come out with, are nowhere near the mark. It's almost childlike when you read it. And some really good people, Paul Burgess was one of them, left. I joined them for a week and left after a week because they refused to talk about England. That's how bad they are. And again, I do believe that the situation is so bad with reform that people are being conned. So don't forget, everyone, we have got the seminar, constitutional seminar, up in, can you put it out there in the chat, Barrow and Burness, is it called? Cumbria, basically. And that area is being targeted. I think it's odd that the building of the mosque, the work on the mosque, I believe, has now stopped because they've run out of money. And I believe that all that money was being channeled into these mosques by NGOs and others. We were being defrauded. And I think all of a sudden it started to be apparent that what President Trump is doing in the US by shutting down all these funding elements, I think part of that was what was going on with us. So just to make sure everyone's aware. Let me have a quick look. Any other questions from anyone? Give us a shout. I've got loads of things I've got to go through and do as well tonight, so I'll be doing that. Furnace, English. Wish I could get to the seminar, too far away. Little money. No, yeah, I know. Don't worry, but get as many of the locals up there as possible, because I think it's important. More and more people are talking about the Constitution. More and more people are understanding that it is a mechanism that is not being enforced. It forbids Sharia. And yet we've still got a situation that these people have been indoctrinated to believe what the law is in British universities, have basically been misinstructed. And all I'm doing is telling people the absolute truth and showing them the evidence of it. Right. So, again, I just want everyone to keep doing. And let me tell you something now. I'm not doing this on my own. Without you being on Twitter, without you being pushing this out all the time, without you contacting channels and saying, speak to, let him come on and speak to you. You're the people getting this out there. All I'm doing is trying to, just telling you exactly how it is. But I can't do it on my own, and you are the ones assisting me. That's it, really, for tonight. Hopefully, there's plenty of information out there that you understand that's going on. I'll be back tomorrow night. And we'll go, and I'm sure there's something about to happen in the Middle East. I don't know what's going on out there. I've started to think there is something that I do think, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not. Could the army go against the state and defend the people? It could, but the problem is the army. The Ruperts, in other words, commissioned officers, are all. You only become a commissioned officer if you've got a degree. Mainly, that's the main route. But most of them people have already been indoctrinated, and they've got this thing in their head, especially veterans, about British. As I started to show and explained, it's a legal fiction. Your English, it is in fact Soviet communist. The same as using the term "stronger together" is a Soviet slogan. So the more people understand that, the better. That's it. Don't forget the sum of all fears. Yeah, Q. Yeah. There is something going on out there. It has to be the biggest scandal in a long-time scandal of Great British history. There is no bigger scandal, and the rape of our kids is ongoing. And I think we should be concentrating on that. We should be multiplying that. As they try to distract with the Epstein files, we should, because this is the British regime have done this. People need to understand that. Ruperts are carried. Yep, no, they always are. Army has gone bloody woke. Modern soldiers aren't what they used to be. No, they're not. No, and we need to resolve it. That's it anyway. I'm going to say good night, God bless. And I will see you all tomorrow evening. Same time, 8 p.m. Don't forget, I think I've got another couple of things out there I was going to put out. There's another link out there if anyone wants to. There's an easy link where you can set up. It's called Donor Box. Hopefully Tracy puts it out in her things because that's helpful to me. That's it. Good night. God bless. I will see you all tomorrow evening. Don't forget what I believe in. The Constitution is the solution. And I think people have started to see that, but it needs to be enforced. How do you enforce it? Get rid of the bad judges. Even if we have to try them and hang them. That's it. Au revoir.